Alrighty then. Hey everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Mark Harrison, and in today's session, we're going to be talking turbocharging Bamboo with Octopus Deploy. Our presenter for us today is Derek Campbell. How are you today, Derek?
Hey Mark, I'm really good, thanks. The weather in Scotland today is as beautiful as ever. It's wet and grey. What about yourself?
Yeah, I'm great, thanks. Similar down in Brighton, actually. I was hoping the sun would be shining, but it appears as it's now September, it's going to be forecast of rain for the foreseeable future.
Got to love it, I guess. You should, it doesn't sound too dissimilar to where I am. And you've just joined the team as well, haven't you?
That's right. Yeah, it's my second week this week, and first webinar. So thanks for having me. I'm really excited about this topic, and I think we've got a lot of people who are too. So let's go ahead and get started. But first, some housekeeping. So you won't need to record the session. We'll be doing that for you. We'll do some editing and uploading of the video, and we should have this emailed out around 48 hours after the webinar ends. You should receive an email, which will include a link to the recording and any other links or useful documentation and samples that Derek uses in the webinar today. We're also on our community Slack for any questions. So if you go to octopus.com/Slack and join there and join into our community in the webinar channel, I'll be on there and you can ask any questions you may have. At the end of the presentation, we'll do a Q&A with Derek where we'll take some of those questions and ask him, put him in the hot seat. So without further ado, I'll hand over to you, Derek.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mark. So let's jump into today's agenda. We're going to jump in and explain what is Atlassian Bamboo. We'll then discuss what is Octopus Deploy. We'll be doing most of today will be a hands-on demo, and like Mark said, there'll be some questions at the end. Stick your questions in Slack if you can. That would be most logical, and I'll address those at the end of today's webinar. So let's jump in. So what is Atlassian Bamboo? Atlassian Bamboo is it's a continuous integration platform. You mainly use it for build, test, and deployments. Unsurprisingly, it integrates very easily with Jira, Bitbucket, and Confluence, and really complements them really well. It used to actually be a cloud platform as well, but that was retired in 2017. And then everything now is on premise. So we'll be hosting this today on an Azure virtual machine with a SQL backend. It's really one of the things that I really like about Bamboo is that it's really extendable. From that, you've got over 150 extensions in the marketplace, and that does grow pretty quickly. Much like Octopus as well, everything is over a REST API. So you can do a lot of really interesting things like providing information regarding the server, the current status of their builds, and so forth. So yeah. And just a little fun fact is that roughly about 5% of all packages that Octopus receives is actually via Bamboo. So I think that's really cool. And there's a lot of packages that it receives, several million. So that's a lot of packages. So let's jump in. I'm going to just jump into Bamboo just now and give you a quick overview. So as you can see here, this is just a test environment I've spun up for today's webinar. And let's just jump in. So how this works is it's normally separated into a project. A project is specific to an application, and it contains many plans inside of it. It also has links to other applications as well. So as you can see, so that's the project. So we've got the OctoFX project, and then we have the OctoFX plan. A plan contains the overall configuration for the task being performed, and it also has information regarding things like source code, build triggers, permissions, and then some variables as well. Initially, a plan, when you start this, and just one thing I should say is that I have configured this all before, so I'll be talking through it rather than configuring it. I've done this, and when you configure it, and it becomes a little bit more tedious. But yeah, so obviously initially a plan has one stage, but multiple stages can be grouped together using different jobs. All stages in a plan run sequentially, and I think it was back from Bamboo 5. Plans in Bamboo can now share build artifacts as well. And one thing to be aware of, you can do deployments with Bamboo. I am using Octopus as I generally find it a little bit easier to use. Okay, so let's jump in. As you can see, I have run this in 100% successful, which is always great. It takes about 4 minutes to build. So let's just jump into configure plan. I will go through these in more detail in just a moment. But yeah, as you can see, we've got some stages and jobs. And from that is each stage is separated down. So I've got a build and test. We're going to create a release. We're then going to do a deployment to development and then test and then production. So in here, as you can see, you can configure all of these here. And then obviously, as you can see, we've got the stages. A stage is actually initially just a single job, but you can create multiple jobs under each stage. And also, then you jump down to jobs in a stage, and these are generally run in parallel. For example, we may want to run the functional unit tests at the same time, and then each job can be assigned to a different agent and so forth. But yeah, and then lastly, you've got tasks. Task is actually the smallest unit of work that an agent does. And since all the tasks within a job are being performed on a single agent, they need to be processed in a sequential order. So for instance, examples of this includes like building code, deploying an application. But I will take you through this in more detail in just a moment. Okay, let's jump into Octopus Deploy. What is Octopus? Octopus started out, I've actually been using Octopus since 2012. It's been around a little bit before that, but it's a deployment automation tool primarily. It's something that you can use to automate your deployments to a whole range of services, cloud provider, on-prem, and you can use it to promote releases between environments. So you could use Octopus to, say, for instance, push it from dev to test, test to pre-prod, and then pre-production to production. One of the things that I really like is it's an API first platform. So you don't actually necessarily have to give everybody access to it. If you can do it within the user interface, you can do it over the API. And we launched last year, I think it was back in June 2018, we launched our cloud product. And as well as that, primarily it has been an on-premise solution, but our cloud product, we launched version 1 on AWS, and then we're actually about to launch V2 on Azure Kubernetes service, which is really cool. So let's jump in and I'll show you around Octopus. Okay, so this is Octopus. What you've got here, this is the dashboard. So when you first log in, this is what you'll see. Down the left-hand side, you'll have projects. And then across the top here, you've got your environment. As you can see here, you've got a few sample projects that we have. And generally, projects are something that's shipped together at the same time. So if you were, for instance, deploying a monolithic application, you would likely have it down here on the left-hand side. If you were using things, if you're doing microservices, then you may have several hundred projects. And then I'd certainly look at project groups and whatnot. So let's just jump in. I'll give you a quick overview of what. And one thing that I really like about Octopus as well is the dashboard here. As you can see within the dashboard, it's very easy to track exactly what version of what project or application is where. So as you can see, for instance, in the OctoFX one, you've got 2019, 9, 11, 111 in dev, but you've got 109 on production, pre-prod. So yeah, as you can see, this is all there for you. I really like the dashboard. It just makes everything easier to see exactly where it is. And then you jump into the project. You then have a project dashboard. Again, this gives you a bit more granular information. So all you've got here on the left-hand side is actually the release and then where it is. So you can see, again, much like that, 11.111 is only in pre-prod. So if you select deploy, it would then take you through the deployment process. Okay, so next up is the deployment process. I'm not going to spend too much time here. We do have a Octo 101 getting started guide where we take OctoFX and configure it from just the application. There's no build server, no automation there. It's just we configure that. So I'd recommend giving that a view on YouTube. If you YouTube Octopus 101 getting started. It's a session by Ryan Russell. I definitely recommend it. So what you've got here is you've got a deployment process, and for the most part, normally deployment processes look fairly similar. You'll normally get some form of approval, and then at that point, you're normally doing a database deployment, then deploying the database, and then lastly, just doing some rolling deployments. So you generally, rolling deployments are like a parent-child step. So it'll take each one out and then run through each step for each target. You may find that in development and tests, you only have a single web server or database, and then what you may have in production is, you know, you may 4 to 8, potentially even more, and then you can actually just control that. So you remove something by the load balancer and then do it that way. So yeah. And then lastly, we do have ways to notify of deployments. So this is actually a community step template. So you can use Slack, Microsoft Teams, and email if that's your bag. So yeah, that's your deployment process. And then in here, you've got project variables. This is generally things that change between environments. As you can see here, we've got the project database name. This is obviously, the database name changes based on the scope. In this instance, because we're sharing infrastructure, this is what this is. And then lastly, you've got, you know, obviously app pools and whatnot. And then you can also have the connection string. So yeah, here it is here. And as you can see, obviously, for instance, your server may change your username and password. I'd hope your password would change between environments and SQL. So yeah. Okay, that is mostly the project configuration. Infrastructure-wise, we do host, we support a range of different deployment targets. What you have here is you have Windows, so that's a listening tentacle and a polling tentacle. That's effectively just different ways to connect to the endpoint. The polling tentacle goes back the way to the Octopus server. The listening tentacle goes the other way. You've got some Linux. This is actually something I'm really excited about. Is we just saw we have a Linux tentacle, both listening and polling. That is in early access. It is literally just about to be released. So hopefully by the end of the month we should see that. And certainly I'd really recommend it. Just having a look at it. If you want to do Mac connections, you can also do SSH. You can do that with Linux as well. We do have a range of Azure services here, where you've got an Azure Web App, Service Fabric Cluster, Cloud Service, Kubernetes Cluster, and then offline package drop in cloud regions. Okay, so let's go back here. And then, so that's Octopus. And this is a good visual aid for you. This is effectively what most CI/CD pipelines. Generally, you've got a developer. He's doing his developer-y things. He checks in his code several times a day. Well, I'd hope so. And then at that point, Bamboo can actually be configured to monitor the source control. So if you're doing things like Git flow with release branching and all that sort of good stuff, then what could do is you can actually use Bamboo to monitor the source control and then pull every time there's a new release. So yeah. And then so what Bamboo does is it builds a code, it runs a unit test, and it creates the artifact. It then pushes the build artifacts to Octopus Deploy. And this is where Octopus then, you know, that's a good thing about Octopus. It also allows things like Bamboo to really help focus on what it's really great at. And it is building the code, testing the code, and so forth. And then Octopus, you can push your build artifacts to Octopus for deployment. This could be to a virtual machine, Windows, Linux, Kubernetes, for instance. And then you can use Octopus to just automatically trigger deployments to say things like dev and test and so forth. You may find then at pre-prod or a QA, they normally manually promote it and then run through the regression testing and all that sort of good stuff. And then lastly, once everybody's happy with it, then the web admin and potentially also the DBA then push it to the production environment. Okay, so let's jump into today's demo. So we're back on Bamboo. I'm going to jump in, and one of the things I just want to say here is we actually have our own plugin for Bamboo. So there's a lot of this here that you will have to, initially you can download it and then upload it to Bamboo. So if you come to octopus.com, you go to resources, downloads. And as you can see down here on the left-hand side, we have a Bamboo add-on. If you select download, what you can do is you select get it now. I've already, this is for the people in the UK, this is my Blue Peter moment. I've already come in, and I'll just show you this here. Go to overview, and just down here on the left-hand side, you've got manage applications or manage apps. And as you can see here, we have the Octopus Deploy Bamboo plugin, this is something we develop and maintain. So occasionally you will have to upgrade it. But yeah, this comes with 6 steps. I will talk you through those in just a moment. And one last thing to consider is also you can also download the command tool. So octo.exe, you will need to restore this. And what you can do is just up here is you can specify executables. So in this instance, we've got NuGet, that's to create NuGet packages and so forth. We have Visual Studio 2019, MS Build 32-bit and 64-bit. And then lastly, we also have, this is installed locally on C Tools octo.exe. Okay, so let's jump in and then we can have a look at OctoFX. So up here, we can configure the plan. And you do have a range of things here, like the repository. So as you can see, this is OctoFX. And before we jump in, I just want to give you a little bit more background about OctoFX. OctoFX is a sample application that we've created and built to demonstrate how a multi-tier application can be deployed using Octopus Deploy. So a little bit of context here. OctoFX Limited is a fictitious London-based online foreign exchange company. Retail and business customers can register an account on OctoFX and use it to trade currencies. Effectively, what it's made up of is a customer-facing website. It's a trading website. This is an ASP.NET MVC website where people can log in and trade currencies. On the back end, it's underpinned by a Microsoft SQL database. And then lastly, what it also does is there is a Windows service which updates the exchange rates as these change, not just daily, but minutes by minutes. Yeah. Okay, so that's OctoFX. So what you've got here is within Bamboo, you have a few things to factor in. I've got the stages. I will take you through them in just a moment. So as you can see, we've got the repositories, which is hosted in GitHub. You can have certain triggers. We don't have that. Everything we're doing today is manual, but certainly you can even trigger a release from Jira, which is really nice, I think. You can do some branching as well. Again, this is all manual. You can use Bamboo to configure this to your requirements. Specify things like dependencies, notifications as well, actually. This is a test server, so for instance, you can actually add an email server or HipChat or even just general instant messenger, and then from there you can use it for any notification like build failures, etc. Lastly, I would have a look at the variables. I'm not using variables. The main reason I'm not using variables is I wanted to show you exactly what goes where, and then at that point, if you ever come back to this recording, you definitely can. Everything really is starts with like bamboo.my variable name. Okay, so there's the details. Here we come in, jump into stages, and then each one we've got build. I think this one is the build one is very, very straightforward. Initially, much like anything else, you check out the source control. And then what you do is this pulls it down. I'm running a NuGet package restore and also specifying the solution. I'm using a variable here to just obviously this is the build directory, and then as part of that, that's going to restore all the NuGet packages. And then lastly, we're going to run through MS build. We're creating we're actually using Octopack here, but yeah, as you can see here, we are specifying the project file. We're running through MS build. We've got some configuration. For instance, we are running release, and this is configured to create things like NuGet packages. We are using Octopack. This is an open source tool that we have created, and this is definitely something. This is actually included as part of the repository. You can also see You can also use another step. I'm not using it as generally I prefer to create everything on the command line. But Nick, just before we jump into this, as you can see, add task, type Octopus. And then these are the 6 steps. As you can see, you can also use Octopus as part of the plugin. There is also the ability to pack the package as well. You can create release, deploy release, Octopus metadata. The one that you probably use most is probably deploy, and then promote, and then also push packages. This is just a way for you, once it's built the packages, to push those into the Octopus server. So as you can see here, we're pushing as part of the initial stage. We're going to build and then push packages. We're specifying the URL. This is also where this is the octo.exe, and this is where you would add the new executable. We're using an API key. I will show you how to generate an API key. You're specifying the Bamboo space name. Spaces, I'll show you that in just a moment, but it's a way to effectively have a new, like a sanitized, hard-walled off space for you to do things like, new applications and so forth. Lastly, down here, as you can see, we're specifying the build directory, and then from here, we're grabbing a couple of 3 different NuGet packages. One is being the trading website, the other being the Windows service, and lastly, we're also deploying a SQL database here. So that's it, the initial stage. Let's jump in, and then we can jump into the next one here. You're then creating the release. You could probably combine a few of these. I like separating them out. The reason for that is if, for instance, you get to deploy to test and it breaks, you can actually just run that stage again. So what you've got here, what you'll also probably find is that these all look very, very similar. It's because we've developed them, and they should be reusable. So again, URL, API key, space name, all very much the same. This time it's as we're now creating the release, we specify the project here. In this instance, it's going to be OctoFX, and then release number 2019.9, and then Bamboo build number. You could automatically, as part of this release, you could also do a deployment. I'm not a huge fan of that. I tend to create a release and then follow it up with a different command. So next up, we've got deploy to development. Again, you'll probably find that a lot of this is repeatable. So yeah, octo.exe, specifying the URL, API key, space name, project, environments, and then again, the release number. This button, if you're going to press one button within Bamboo, I would definitely recommend this one. The main reason for that is what it does here, and you may find that that's not for you, but what this does is when you're deploying, it actually pulls all the log files back from Octopus and presents them in Bamboo. If you don't do that, it just won't bring it back. And that way, then you don't necessarily have to give anyone, like you could give someone build access to Bamboo and not give them access to Octopus, and then they can put all that through. So yeah, that's pretty much that one. And you'll find the next ones are all very, very similar. The only difference is we are deploying to test instead of development. You can also use promote release. It's generally not recommended in Bamboo. The main reason is that it will actually promote your last release, and you may not want that. Given your deployment, given this would actually be a better approach because you're specifying the versions and so forth. Lastly, you have production. Much like everything else you've got here, and then you're just deploying to production. Same API keys, same space name, same project. And then lastly, obviously tick your button. So from here, what I'm now going to do is I'm going to kick this off. And then as that's kicking off, I'll jump in to Octopus. And you should actually, by the time I've went through something, you should see some deployments happening. So let's just down, run plan. Let's make sure it's running. You should see. Let's just double check. Oh, did I press that button correctly? One moment. Okay, so yeah, let's just run plan. Okay, and then this is it. So as you can see here, it's got the stages and jobs, and then you don't see the tasks in here, but as you can see, you've got all this here, and it's giving you a lot of really great information. Here's a NuGet. It's installing NuGet packages. It's then packaging everything up, and then it will go through. It will then push these. As you see, it's adding the file. It will then push this over to Octopus. After it's created the release, and then it'll create a release, and then it'll go through this. So this will run sequentially, and what we'll get is we'll get a deployment all the way through to production without actually pressing anymore. So let's just jump into Octopus. This is our default space. Today I'm going to jump into the Bamboo space, which I specified earlier on in the build configuration. Okay, so that's it. And straight away, you can see the little blue, this is actually a deployment happening. We generally only have 4 icons. One is green, everything is all good. It's red, big red cross, everything is bad. And then we have orange, which is manual intervention. I'll speak about that in just a moment. And then lastly, we have blue. That means that there's a deployment underway. So let's jump into the project. Okay, so as I showed you earlier on, each project has its own dashboard. You can see that I did run through an earlier deployment. This is now ongoing. As you can see, I've specified the deployment process. I've approved the deployment. And this, honestly, this is really one of my favorite bits of Octopus. It gives you really granular control of what is approved and where. So as you can see here, you've got an approval. And one of the things that I really like is you can have it so that it only runs for certain steps. So say, for instance, we want to automate everything all the way through to production, but you might be a project manager or a tester, or it could be the technical director or even a client. You could actually give them access to do deployments. Next up, you're doing some SQL work. I don't want to go through this too much, but we've got some variables. It's using different variables to specify different usernames. This way you can configure things like databases, usernames on the fly as well. So yeah, these 4 steps are very, very similar. You just got some variables that you're specifying. And then lastly, let's just jump in. You're doing a database deployment. In this instance, you're using the package octofx.database from feed Octopus server built-in. You can also, Octopus also integrates with external feeds, things like Artifactory, all that sort of good stuff. And then from here, you've actually got some configuration variables and transforms. If you do want to enable some of this, you just select configure features. There's a whole bunch of really great features in here, but check them out. Next, it's the website. We're deploying the website. Again, much like this is going to run on OctoFX Web. It's getting the package octofx.trading website from the built-in feed. And then there's some deployment options around here. I generally don't change many of these, but you've got deploy an Azure web app, but you can obviously change these based on your requirements. And then lastly, you need to deploy that Windows service. That way then, when people are trading currencies, it's the most up-to-date exchange rate. Much like this, you've got some specifications, you've got some Windows service name, display name, all that sort of good stuff. I am using a built-in Octopus variable here called octopus.environment name. So what this will do is it will substitute this bit and it will append, say, development or test or production. The reason we're using that today is we are configuring this on a single VM for the Windows service. I'm sharing a single box across all different ones. This way then obviously it can be hosted. There's some executable configuration here as well. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it. So what you can see here, again, much like I was saying earlier on with the variables, you're specifying things like database names. You don't actually have to have these. Like if you just had the same database name for every environment, again, SQL, I am sharing a SQL box here, and this is the reason for that. Each one, you can use this so you can scope different passwords to different environments. You're specifying the database server name and then some usernames. And this one, like I was saying earlier on, definitely have a look at this. I really like this because you can dynamically change your SQL connection string, for instance, based on your environment. And one thing I would just point out is any data, any passwords, you can never ever get this password back out. It's encrypted using the master key, and it just really gives you some really great features and security. Okay, so let's jump back to Octopus. Okay, so we've got a successful deployment in dev and test. What I'm going to do here is do what people shouldn't really do. As you can see, I've kicked off the build and deployment. I am going to assign to me, like I showed you earlier on, this was assigned to the everyone group. This is only me approving this for demonstration purposes. And then I'll go put some notes for the wrestling fans out there. Ta-da. And then select proceed. So that's you. What it's going to do now, it's going to kick off and run through. And as you can see, it's ran that step one. So let's just jump in and have a quick look at dev. Where's that deployment to production is happening? Okay, so what you've got here is you can see that step one is missing. That's because the manual intervention step is configured to only run in production. Most of the time, you'll probably just spend some time in here in the task progress bar, but if you do see any issues or you want to get more information, jump into the task log. You've got a lot of really great features around here or options. And say, for instance, if you really wanted to see everything you could do verbose and then include all. Okay, so one of my favorite steps is the deploy in Azure web app. What it does is it actually pulls it into okay, so deploying the website. Part of the step, I really like this. It's so basic, but you can just see that it gives you that. It's just a nice feature. There we go. We've got a working website. So this is dev. This is obviously consists of an Azure web app. Then it connects into the Windows service hosted on a Windows virtual machine in Azure. And then lastly, underpinned by a SQL database. Okay, so yeah, excellent. Let's just jump in. Let's go back to overview. Oh, yeah, we've got a working production environment as well. Okay, so yeah, we've got this. Task log's all good. Everything's green. This is fantastic. And then lastly, we'll use a cheeky little. This is great, and it's, as you can see as well, it's also secure, which I think is fantastic. Secure by default. You can also use Octopus to, one of the things I really like is you can use it to deploy certificates as well. So, obviously certificates can be a bit of a nightmare. People forget to renew them, all that sort of good stuff. So that's definitely something you can do with an Octopus and automate it. So yeah, as we've got very, very similar. We've approved this, submitted by Derek Campbell. I've got the notes here. And then just jumping in, you can have deploy the website. This is great. And that's it. So we've got a working website in production, test, and development. As you can see, it's been fully automated, minus a little manual intervention. And as you can see here, just that is you basically. That is everything now. It's effectively everything configured, deployed. We've got working websites with MS SQL backends. And as you can see, just I've got some deployment targets just so I want to be. You see, we've got AutoFX Dev, Prod, and Test. And these are Azure web apps, and they're specified a link to certain environments. And then what you also have is a AutoFX Bastion box. This is what you use to do the SQL the deployments or the database deployments. We generally don't recommend that you have a tentacle direct on your MS SQL box. We normally recommend some form of deployment management or Bastion box or a jump box to do those deployments. It's just some performance and some security benefits there. And then lastly, we've got the AutoFX rate service. So yeah, that hosts that hosts the Windows service. And that's pretty much it, guys. As you can see, what we've done is successful deployment. We should just look back in, and everything is all green in Bamboo as well, which is always great. And you can, if you ever any issues, you can actually come in here and specify and have a look exactly what is happening. Oh, actually, one thing, I didn't show you how to create an API key. So you need an API key based on just to access Octopus. It's assigned to a user. In this instance, we have a build server. What you can do here is it is actually, this is an active user. What this basically means is it's a service account. So let's do this. Come down, the user API key. You can just create, you just select new API key, select its purpose, and then it'll give you an API key that you can then use on your Bamboo server. Okay, that is it. I think that's us for today. I'll just want to come back. Mark, do you have any questions?
Thanks for that, Derek. Just have a double check. I didn't see any questions come in, but that was a pretty thorough walkthrough of Bamboo, so that's not a massive surprise. I did have one question myself. So wondering if there was support for building .NET Core in Bamboo.
Yeah, that's native actually. You can definitely do .NET Core. To be honest, it's very extendable. It does Java as well. All that sort of good stuff. It's Bamboo's actually. I've used it. I used it some time ago. In the product, it's definitely it's improved considerably. But yeah, you can do .NET Core.
Excellent. Thanks for that. Great answer. So I think we're good on the questions segment. So as we mentioned at the start, we're recording this webinar. We'll send this out in about 48 hours, along with links to samples and the other resources on integrating Bamboo with Octopus Deploy. Derek, thanks so much for that presentation. That was great. And thank you to everybody who joined us. I just want to quickly mention some of the upcoming events we've got. So on the 25th of September, we've got an Octopus 101 getting started. That's with Ryan Russo. And then on the 16th of October, we have another Octopus 101 on multi-tenanted deploys, again with Ryan. And a week after that, on the 23rd, we've got Derek doing turbocharging Team City with Octopus. So lots of great topics coming up in the next few weeks, and hopefully you can come along to them.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mark.
Pleasure.
Just one thing, you can grab me on Twitter at Octo